When Fletcher Christian and his shipmates on board the Bounty cast adrift their tormentor and commander William Bligh, they'd started much more than just a mutiny. To avoid being hung, these men would now have to vanish from the face of the earth. For 9 months, the Bounty mutineers zigzagged the Pacific, collecting food, slaves, and women. Then they settled on one of the most inaccessible specks on the globe, Pitcairn Island. In Bounty Bay, the mutineers burnt their ship, keeping only the longboats for fishing. It was 18 years before they saw another human being, a period in which 16 lives were lost to disease, madness, and murder. By then, only one mutineer, John Adams, remained alive, with 10 wives and 23 children. A mere 3 generations later, the population had inbred to nearly 200 Bounty descendants, more than the tiny island could support. The Royal Navy, who'd by now forgiven the Pitcairners the sins of their ancestors, agreed to ship the entire population to Norfolk Island in 1856. But homesickness soon claimed 5 families who fled again to Pitcairn. For 126 years, the 2 branches of the Bounty clan remained separated by 6,000 kilometres of Pacific Ocean. Until now.
Get on stage, that's the way.
Auckland Airport. It's late at night and a group of excited travellers is speaking one of the world's rarest tongues, Pitcairn Pidgin. These people are all from Norfolk Island, all descendants of the Pitcairn Bounty mutineers. Tonight they're pilgrim tourists, flying out towards South America to attend a reunion on the remote speck of rock made notorious by their ancestors. Today's modern pilgrims pitched and rolled the last leg from Norfolk to Pitcairn aboard a rust bucket tramp chartered from Tahiti. Now, relatives they've never seen come to boat them ashore. The entire Pitcairn population, all 32 of them today, are out on the longboats to welcome almost twice as many visitors. For more than a century, Pitcairners and their Norfolk cousins, separated by most of the Pacific, had only the rare mailbags to keep them in contact. Now, in a 6-day reunion, they're making up for being out of touch for so long. Because the Bounty's crew married into Polynesia, news of the pilgrimage spread quickly through the islands, and by the time it arrives, the freighters jammed to the gunwales with long-lost relations the Pitcairners never knew they had. Theirs is turning out to be one crowded island, but the Pitcairners are delighted to see everyone. After retching at the rail most of the voyage, the landlubber pilgrims are delighted simply to have made it here. There is no safe harbour. Pitcairn is simply a mountain tip floating alone and steep in thousands of metres of water. The only local vessels are longboats, which are surfed into Bounty Bay to shelter behind a jetty.
My sister.
This is one of the hardest places to get to on this planet. To put it mildly, visitors are rare. There is no shipping service. There is no airport. The islanders don't have a boat to sail the more than 500 kilometres to the nearest inhabited island. They don't even have a harbour in which to moor such a boat. To get here is to get to the end of the world.
It's the easiest. Stay where they went.
Pitcairn is also very small. The island is only 450 hectares, 1/5 the area of Rangitoto Island. And most of that is cliff and mountain. To move more than a few score metres, Pitcairners tend to travel by trike. Fletcher Christian called this the Hill of Difficulty, and up it he and his crew, their children and wives, hauled all they'd saved from their ship before they burnt her. Bits of the bounty can still be found here under the surf. At the hub of the cliff-top settlement is the Adamstown Square, where everybody gathers now for a share-out. Following an old seaman's custom once designed to share out lifeboat rations, the Pitcairners distribute the gifts and supplies which have just been landed by their visitors. Almost everything the islanders consume has to be imported, much of it from New Zealand. Perhaps 4 times a year, Pitcairners do manage to persuade a freighter to call here with a container or 2 of stores just for them. But for the rest, they rely on bartering with passing ships. When a freighter is sighted, these people rush to the longboats, motor out to sea and literally hail themselves a ship. On board, they barter Pitcairn produce and carvings for cans of soft drink, timber, oil, anything they can get. For almost 2 centuries, this novel combination of swapping and begging has enabled Pitcairn to survive. "50 years ago, Pitcairn housed 230 people. Today, permanent Pitcairners number only 44, and most of those are children and old people. Because the longboats must be crewed by strong oarsmen, it's touch and go from year to year to stay afloat with so few able-bodied sailors. If even 3 of its young men were to leave, the Pitcairn community could be finished. Signs of decay are all around. Houses built last century from untreated scrap timber scrounged from ships are finally succumbing to their termites. They'll be swiftly overgrown. But the climate here is so pleasant that you don't need much of a house. Many shacks are well over a century old, and if there was a wind, it'd whistle through. But these are all that many Pitcairners need or want. They have electricity, plenty of wood for the range, copious fish and bananas, and today, wild goat meat as a celebration dinner. There's no crime here, no drugs, no taxes. But rustic charm and a place in the history books is not enough to keep many young people in a place like this. Tom Christian, MBE, was an exception. He saw the world, didn't like it, and came home for good. Now he's showing the ultimate confidence in Pitcairn by building its one and only new house with materials imported at great expense from New Zealand. But Tom knows that his children may not share his dream.
They could do primary schooling here up to approximately age 15, and then after that they have to go off to, probably to New Zealand for secondary college education. And the big problem that we've had in the past, other young people have gone off and then they don't come back, or rather they don't want to come back, because once they've received a good education, there's limited use for it here. And if they have a special career, then the average one seems to prefer to stay in the outside world.
Pitcairn is a British dependent territory, one of the last Empire colonies. Yet its children won't be allowed to work in Britain or to claim British welfare. They'll have no vote in Westminster, nor even an MP to represent them in the country which, by a twist of fortune, is legally the islanders' motherland. On the credit side, these children are not eligible to pay Her Majesty's taxes, nor to fight her wars. Even the island's administration and its British governor are in Wellington. And the fact is that Pitcairners regard Britain as a foreign country and New Zealand as their actual motherland. They use New Zealand currency. They travel to New Zealand for their medical needs and their education. Their teacher is posted here from Northland, and he even teaches them some Maori. In many ways, Pitcairn Island is a dependent territory New Zealand doesn't know it has. Pitcairn even dumped the Church of England for American Adventists.
This is a very old traditional hymn, known well in both Pitcairn and Norfolk, and has been specially requested to be sung in the service this morning. The hymn Gethsemane.
99 years ago, a Seventh-day Adventist wandered out here and converted Pitcairn to the Saturday Sabbath. The faith was carried on to Norfolk, so now both clans worship in unison. The Pitcairn religion forbids pork, alcohol and dancing. The religious disapproval of dancing caused a few awkward moments this night, when the ship's Tahitian crew, its Polynesian and Norfolk passengers, automatically launched into one of the sexiest dances on earth, the tamaré. Some of the visitors were puzzled when staunch Pitcairners refused to be dragged onto the dance floor, but there were no harsh words, and the dance went on. Alcohol is illegal here, but double standards abound, with Pitcairners often returning ashore from visiting ships, reeling from more than just the wave motion. Many young islanders want the liquor laws changed, but church elders resist.
Well, personally, I'd hate to see alcohol come onto this island because of problems we had in the early days and other problems that they've had in other Pacific islands. I think it would be a sad mistake. In a place like New Zealand where you have people to deal with it, you have the police force, you have doctors, you have hospitals and all that, then I don't think there's any problem there. But it's a different situation the way I see it out here on a remote island if it gets out of hand.
But Pitcairn's a pretty democratic place, and the locals may just outvote Tom Christian and the island's other staunch Adventists.
I'm not too sure at the present time. I have a feeling, though, that within the next year or two, they may even grant license to locals.
And their sex laws? Well, it used to be illegal here to live in sin. Then a Kiwi woman moved in with a local, so they changed the law. Simple. Pitcairners live largely on fish. Today, their visiting relatives join them with spears and lines in the longboats. Many Pitcairners have been killed by the sea. Even now, survival on this island depends to a large degree on boatsmanship. There's almost no sea shelf at the foot of these cliffs. The Pacific is kilometres deep, just a short way from shore. So heavy seas smack into their pinnacle home with horrifying force and often with little warning. It's a place where they take the weather very seriously. By the landmarks, we should be right on top of a favourite rock.
That's right.
And there it is. A couple of centuries ago, Fletcher Christian was living here by much the same means as this. The bounty mutineers and their Tahitian wives and manservants melded West Country English with sailors' folksal slang and Tahitian to create a new tongue which, when spoken now, can still exclude all outsiders. Meantime, such was the fascination with the romance of the bounty mutiny in the outside world that more than 2,500 works were written about this island, plus films with Marlon Brando, Clark Gable, and many others.
Oh no, not there. We know what they are. Oh yeah.
And all that the global attention did for these people was to make them into the curios of the Pacific. And they don't pay much mind to all of that. This is the sort of stunt that romance-stricken foreigners bring to Pitcairn. Jerry Miller, an American infatuated with the story of Fletcher Christian, and by his own admission bearing a calculated resemblance to Clark Gable, hitched a ride here on a tuna boat. Then he imported his sweetheart, Mary Wagonblast, for a marriage on the rocks. The local pastor is obliging, the Norfolk Island Amateur Video Society is enraptured, and the bridesmaids are loving it. And the Pitcairners? Well, most of them are staying away. This just isn't their scene.
Will you love her, comfort her, honour her, cherish her, so long as you both shall live?
I will.
Will you, Mary, Joanne, Wagonblast, Patrick, and Jerry, Ron Miller? for as much as Jerry, Ron, Miller.
It's surprising just how many of the world's roaming dreamers actually make it to Pitcairn to experience this staggering sense of isolation. When we visited, Pitcairn's only means of speaking to the world was by Morse code, through Fiji, nearly 5,500 kilometres away. Since then, they've bought themselves a radio telephone link with New Zealand. Again, even the stationery comes from Wellington. But the operator comes from Norway. Carrie Boy Young was a ship's radio officer who came for a holiday and married onto Pitcairn.
Oh, I wrote to the Island Council and the governor, the government office, to ask for permission to land here, and they said, oh no. The Island Council said yes though, but the governor didn't want a Norwegian dreamer here, I think. He thought I would be a burden to the island.
Why did he think you were a dreamer?
I don't think he appreciated my reasons for coming here. I mentioned about Mutiny on the Bounty and how fascinated I was with Clark Gable at the time, so he didn't take me serious at all.
You put that on your official application?
Oh yeah, I did. I was honest. I could have put down that I'd like to study the anthropology or dig for stone axes or something, and they would have accepted me right away. But that wasn't my intention at all.
Here, much to her surprise, Carrie found her dream island and her Clark Gable. She married them both.
I'm very glad I came, because I think this is the kind of life I always wanted. I wanted to get away from everything.
A lot of romantics on this island, aren't there?
Yeah, I think it invites to romantic dreams because of the history and the isolation, and everything seemed to be possible on Pitcairn. It's quite unique. The people are very special too, and it's so beautiful here. You forget about all the bad things outside. So it's a kind of escaping, I suppose, coming here.
Are you tired?
This is a landmark international cricket test match. Pitcairn versus Norfolk Island. The dirt pitch slopes uphill, the rules are peculiar, and the rough ground is frustratingly close to the infield. Then a break while the island bulldozer clears another hectare of outfield. It's this rough plateau which may one day be levelled for an airfield, if the islanders can find a couple of $1 million.
Another one there, when it costs like a harder.